Right, aloha, 808 Wellness Community. We're so excited to have you rejoin us today for our Illuminations series with our healing arts practitioners that are based here on Maui. And the beautiful thing these days is if you are not on Maui, have access to these healers as we all work remotely. And so you can either be here in person and experience their wonderful work, or as well over Zoom or other video sessions. So to get started today, we're going to be introducing Desirae Bloom. So welcome, Desirae. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Aloha.
Aloha. And Desirae is a very gifted, beautiful healer. She works with sacred geometry. So she's a sacred geometry healer, and she's also a conscious parenting coach. So welcome.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So we're going to just jump right in and start to learn more about the work that you offer. And as some people may know what sacred geometry is, but some people might not be as familiar. So if you want to go ahead and share with us a little bit about that, and then we'll dive into the conscious parenting work as well later on.
So in a nutshell, sacred geometry can be found in anything in existence. It can be anything from a leaf to a grain of sand, to the sound of our name, to the relationship that we may be in. Every single thing has a sacred geometric format to it. And when we work with these, let me backtrack. When we come into the earth plane, there's a lot of conditioning here. And so we have family conditioning, we have societal conditioning, cultural conditioning. And so immediately, as soon as we come into the womb, we start being impacted in those ways of thinking, and they shape us. And in that process, oftentimes we forget our qualities, we forget our gifts, we forget our power. We really just forget our natural rhythm. And when we are able to work with the sacred geometry, we are actually pulling in a pure blueprint of whatever that is that we're intending. And it actually restructures the DNA. It works within our cells, the atoms, the subatomic particles, and completely transforms our energetic field and reestablishes our natural rhythms and what the natural blueprints of whatever it is that we're intending. And so we entrain to those. Yeah.
That sounds amazing. I love that. Because it broadens the spectrum, I think, for me, what I see as sacred geometry, because when we first met, I was like, I think of the general sacred geometry shapes, or like the infinity sign, or our business logo is one, but then or yantras and all these things. And yet the idea of it coming in and being able to like clear your DNA and give you this new blueprint is really exciting. And for one, I've had a healing session with you, so I know how effective and amazing it is. And we'll all get to experience that later on in the session today when you do a short meditation for us, so we can experience that, because often in healing work, we can talk about it, but it's the experience of it that really connects us to that work. And so how did you first get into learning about this, and was it part of your own healing journey or life's path?
It was definitely part of my own journey. I've been through my own journey. To start with the sacred geometry, I moved to Big Island, Hawaii in 2011. And shortly after I got there, I just had so many intuitive experiences there. And then all of a sudden, I spontaneously wanted to draw these shapes. I didn't understand it, but it was just flipping through my mind so fast, to the point where I was like, I have to draw these. And I think I drew like 5 patterns just in the first sitting. And for about the first 3 weeks, I just saw them in my third eye all day, all night. And it was just overwhelming, but awesome. And then I was experiencing all kinds of revelations, and it was just a really explosive time for me psychically. And I began sharing my work with other friends. I was like, oh, this is what I started. And my friends would look at it and they're like, this is so cool. Can I meditate on this? And I'm like, yeah, sure. I was very naive to what was happening. And then I had friends that were reporting that they were having spontaneous healing experiences. They were having past life experiences. They were going to other worlds outside of here and connecting with other beings and families. And so I was just like, wow, I was changing, but I don't know. I just didn't really attribute so much of it to the patterns. And I learned so much through others giving me feedback. And then I had a friend say, well, can you draw a blueprint for me? And I was like, oh, no. And then I saw it in my third eye and I was like, I think so. So I drew it out for her, and her life changed right away. I mean, she was connecting with all kinds of memories that gave her closure in areas of her life and helped her to understand a lot of the patterns that were perpetuating and why she kept hitting blocks. And so then I just, okay, well, I'll just start offering these to the public. And I went to psychic fairs and things like that, and I hit it off. People really, they were drawn to them. They were asking for personalized blueprints. And then it eventually evolved. In 2016, I received guidance, intuitive guidance, that it was time for me to run the energy through healing. And so then I was just didn't, how do I do that? And I went like this, well, how do I do that? And then I felt the template rested in my hand and I was like, oh, that's how I do it. And then I was guided to then work at the crown of the head, and through breath work, I move it through the different areas to anchor it, and I anchor it with a decree at the end. And then it's evolved. It's just gotten so much more powerful, and it continues to since then.
That sounds amazing. And I was thinking, you said it was when you moved to the Big Island. Do you think there was a part of like the island, the energy of the island that helped to activate that within you?
Absolutely. It was phenomenal there. The lava there had such an impact. I could really feel Pele there. And it was 3-4 nights a week for the entire year that I was there that I dreamed about dolphins and whales. It was just, and as soon as I left, it all stopped. And I was just like, well, that was all Big Island. That was the impact on me. I mean, I still had my gifts, but the dreams stopped, and a lot of the creativity kind of went back into a lull a little bit. And then it took me a few years to integrate that experience.
Interesting. Well, and I think there is often a period of integration when you really step into your healing gifts too. Sometimes it can be, like you described, very overwhelming, and there's just a lot of energy downloads, if you will, and all this stuff happening. And then it integrates as your energy field kind of adjusts to that vibration as well that has shifted for you. And so how long have you been on Maui then? When did you move here, and what was it? Did any of the experience or of the energy or the sacred symbols shift for you?
I've been on Maui for about a year. I came over from Kauai, which I was there for 6 months. I had actually been on the mainland before that. It was heartbreaking to go back to the mainland for me, but it fits for some people. But I really love the ocean and the energy here. Anyway, so how did things change here on Maui? Maui has been a different experience for me. This has been more of a creative opening here, and so the templates have really, and I call them templates. These are like the sacred geometry little blueprints. When I work with them, every time I pray or I need support with something, I will actually put one into myself. And I'm finding a lot of them are creativity based or social based. There's a lot of, I'm being encouraged to be more extroverted here. So.
Yeah. Well, and part of the path is bringing those gifts out, right, and sharing them with the world, maybe on a larger level now, so, or to a bigger audience, or.
I hadn't always been comfortable with it.
Yes.
We see people who are very gifted, and it's like, wow, they're so gifted. I want to do that. And then, I had this experience where it came to me, and I was like, yeah, I want to do that. But when it actually came time to it, nothing was working out, and it took me a few years to realize that I didn't really feel safe exposing myself in that way, because it was a deep and intimate part of me. And there's just so many layers to it that I had to walk through. I had to walk through a lot to get to that.
Well, we're grateful that you did. And that because one of my teachers always says that you can only bring your clients as far as you've gone. So when you do that deep inner work, then you can help to bring that forward for others as well. So, so thank you. So how do you bring this, if a client were to book with you, like what would they expect? I mean, is there anything they should do to prepare for a session, or what should they expect when they come to a session?
You know, I just encourage drinking plenty of water and eating healthy. The more that we take care of our bodies in general, because that's our vessel, that's what's holding our light, holding our life force. And so the better we take care of ourselves, the better we're going to receive anything in life. The more pleasure we're going to have when we're sitting next to a loved one who says something funny. We're going to laugh from our bellies, you know, or we're going to lay down for a session. We're going to be able to take that in, and it's really going to sink in. So I'd say that's a number one. And then number two with that is I think having plenty of sleep then afterwards, not right after the session, but knowing that that night when you go home, you're going to be able to have a full night's rest, because there's a lot of brain rewiring that's happening, and a lot of that continues to happen that night and over the next several days.
Yeah, and I can attest to that. I definitely experienced that after the session. I think I went home, I never napped, and I went home and slept for like at least 2 hours, like solid, and went to bed early that night. So yeah, definitely more processing happening afterwards in sleep and in our more unconscious realm. So I definitely felt that. Do you have any suggestions for people after they have a session other than to rest, like any tools or tips to bring with for somebody to help if they're working on, you know, walking a more conscious path, or integrating healing into their life? Anything that's helped you along the way, or suggestions?
Anything that helped me along the way. Well, it's more of a broad statement, but it also can entail with the healing. Well, for one, I'd say to be open to we're talking about after the session,
Yeah.
be open to the changes that are taking place. And there may be some odd experiences. I had some odd experience, and I've heard it from a lot of others that, you know, somebody will say something to them, and it's something that's triggered us for a long time, and we're hearing it, but we're not feeling an emotional response. And it's almost like we can just, it's like we feel the thought, and then it leaves, and then it's gone, and that's it. And it's just like, oh my gosh. And then you have this realization, like, wait a minute, I haven't really been triggered with that for a few weeks, you know, but just to let it happen, because there's openings that are going to happen, because everything begins within us, right? And so there's going to be openings that happen, and to just be curious, and take as much time for loving yourself, for making sure that there's time to relax in between the hustle of life. When we're doing that, our cells are relaxed, our mind is relaxed, our heart is open. We're going to recognize those gifts that are coming to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's super helpful. Maybe we can switch or shift a minute over to your conscious parenting work that you do, or if there's anything else you want to share about the sacred geometry before we do that.
Is there anything more about the sacred geometry? I think that one thing that I want to touch on is that something that I really emphasize in my work is that, or really my life, is that everything, every imbalance in our lives, it begins with the mind. Every health condition begins with the mind. And it doesn't mean that we've done something wrong. It just means that there's a belief system there, right? It comes from that conditioning. And the work that I've been doing is really profound. And I personally had a 13-year chronic illness and was able to pull myself through that. It was deemed incurable, that I would need medication. It was a mystery for many years, and I pulled myself through it with my work. So it's really, it's very powerful, but it all started with my mind and unraveling the beliefs.
And that's a really powerful point too to make. I don't know how this person quantified it, but I remember reading once that 70% of all healing is in our minds. And I was like, well, that's a pretty large percentage of influence that our mind has on our conditions, especially when, and a powerful example about being able to get yourself through the experience you did without medication and heal from it that's very powerful and a testimony to how this work can really help. So thank you very much for sharing that. And so now tell us more about the conscious parenting, because I personally am a parent of two spirited boys, and I'm always looking for, I was like, nothing has ever tested my spiritual and meditation practice more than my children. And I love them to death, but I'm like, I'm very open to hearing more about conscious parenting.
You know, parenting is not meant to be so difficult. It's actually a very simple and beautiful experience in a world that supports it. But again, we're going to go back to the conditioning. The conditioning here really makes it challenging to parent in a conscious way, to parent, you know, because children come in without the boundaries that we have here. And unfortunately, in our world, those boundaries, a lot of them are actually barriers. And so there's a big distinction. My work with children and families, I guess it stems from my discovery that so many of us lost contact with our internal rhythm from the time that we were children. And many of us were forced to grow up early and don't even recognize it because it's a normal human way. A lot of us have experienced our parents having a busy schedule, and so they couldn't give us the attention that we needed, or maybe there was a time crunch, and so we didn't have the open space to really explore our creativity and get a strong sense of who we are and what we feel like in our own natural energy. So, you know, we can even take it back to old Native American traditions. A lot of them will keep the newborn babies in the home at least for 30 days before leaving and before having any contact with anyone but the immediate family. And the reason is because they recognize that part of the child's life as extremely important for the child to really understand what he or she feels like, so that as they grow up, they know what their center point feels like. You know, we hear in the spiritual community a lot about centering and grounding and breathing, and but if you don't have a reference point of what you actually feel like, a lot of us really aren't getting to that point of our internal rhythm. And so we're touching down, and we're getting to areas that make it easier for us to move through life, but we're really not getting down to the internal rhythm where we're actually seeing these things, seeing the patterns that are being perpetuated. And so my work helps families to discover and reestablish what their internal rhythm is. And then from there, you can make magic from anything, because that's just your point of your greatest safety and relaxation and clarity.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I don't know if you've heard of the fourth trimester before, but some people have that practice now to spend actually up to 3 months with a newborn afterwards, and keeping them in the home, and like just allowing that last stage of development to occur for the baby and help the transition process. So I like that. How do you help the families to realign to that center when you're working with them? I mean, are you working with the whole family unit? Are you working with just the parents or just the kids? How does that look?
It really just looks like it's whatever. I like to work with the parents first, and then I work with the families. I'll work with the children. It can change depending on what the family really wants, what's going on. But what I'm really passionate about is starting with the parents, because in the conscious parenting field, in any parenting, and I did this, we often want to, look at, well, this is the power struggle that I'm having. And we really want to look at the problem areas and say, well, this is what's happening. How do I get my child to? Well, instead of how do I get my child to, how can I help my child understand? How can I help my child learn? But let's take it back a step. We're looking at resolving things with our children. Our children are just instruments that help us to learn where we may not be loving ourselves. And so we can change things in many ways in our family environment or in our lives. But if we're not making those changes within ourselves, we're not making that connection, it's another element of control and attachment that sets us up for more heartache later on. It does help us, but it's a much slower way of growing, as opposed to getting to the root of what it means to love me. And that begins with as simple as gentleness for those of us that have really busy schedules. I mean, I went through, with my chronic illness, I went through an experience where I was overloaded, and I was just like, I don't have any time for more than 5 minutes of yoga a day. I can't even drop in. I was just so overwhelmed. And it dawned on me, like, I've got to start loving myself more somewhere. And then I heard Spirit say to me, devotion is timeless. And I was so mad when I heard it, because I was like, that's not fair. I want more time in my life. And then I really pondered that, and I was like, okay, how can I bring more pleasure into my life that I already am living? And so I began brushing my teeth with my left hand, which I'm right-handed, and I got toothpaste all over, and I laughed at myself in the mirror. You know what I mean? I just had to find those. I put good, essential oils in the sink when I was washing the dishes so I could smell something good. And these are just little love gestures that I did for myself. And just the act of doing that opened things up and changed things for me. But it took a little bit of time for me to commit and really hold to that for myself.
I love those examples, actually. And yeah, no, that's really helpful information, and definitely I can relate to that. And I think especially in this world today, there is so much busyness, always being connected to devices and always plugged in and all these things, and to really take that time to unplug and find those quiet small moments throughout the day, instead of it having to be this big act, to remind ourselves throughout that there's a lot of little reminders that we can give ourselves to lighten up, to slow down.
Well, the objective is not to fulfill the practice, whatever the desired practice is. The objective is to feel safe and calm, is to feel, and I don't want to, I'm careful about calm, because we don't want to make ourselves feel that way. That doesn't work. The objective is to feel safe and to feel at ease, and whatever that looks like, and our children, they function through mirror neurons. And so when they are just in our presence, and especially when they make eye contact, they are actually receiving signals through their subconscious on how to carry themselves, how to emotionally regulate. They're learning, their nervous systems are learning how to tick, and what their rhythms are based off of us, because we share a root chakra with our children for a while. And so when we take care of ourselves, that's the thing. We don't have to do all of these rituals for parenting like so many say that we do, although they are supportive. Really, parenting is very natural. And when we come to the heart of us and our natural rhythm, we're connected. And when we're connected, life flows and we feel our way through life. And so we don't need to take these steps with our child that's going through something. We just look at our child and embrace them. And there's such a love that envelops them that they just melt into it. And it's through that experience that they actually learn, this is how I regulate my emotions, because they're not hearing it, and they're not receiving it through their minds. They're actually feeling it in their nervous system, and their subconscious is taking it in. And so they naturally just become it.
It's really beautiful. Yes. And I can relate to those moments of when, especially if one of my kids is crying, or like they fell down or they're upset or something. And it's just like, I just sit on the floor and just hold them, and then just let them process it. And like you said, self-regulate. And eventually, like, all of a sudden they'll just like get up, look around and walk away. And I'm like, all right, we're done, and then I think about the conditioning as a child, when you're told, like, don't cry, get up, toughen up, all this stuff. It's like, they will move through that process if you give them space to on their own, just by holding that space with them and connecting in. And like you said, the connection between the root chakra, or even neurologically, I think that there's some connections there with the baby and the mother that last for quite a while. So
definitely,
that's really beautiful work. And it's so important these days, is raising these children, especially in a time of technology. I think it's really extra important to have this conscious aspect to it, because it's very easy to like just plug the kids in because you have to make dinner, you have to do whatever. And instead of engaging with the kids, and then the kids are starting to become so dependent on technology or having that emotional attachment to a device versus a human. So it's just so extra important right now for parents to really get tuned in this, in my opinion, to really connect in with the kids and make sure that we're raising this generation in a way that is able to balance the benefits of technology with the connection of being a human, you know. And
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I think it's a balance. I will admit that the first few years that I really got into this, and I got into it because I was so sick and the relationship with my kids were breaking down and I couldn't reach them because I didn't have the vitality. And so because I couldn't have it, I learned so much intuitively about conscious parenting, but I couldn't really implement it for years. But on this journey, I actually started with, I know what, I just lost my train of thought. We were talking about something right before that. So,
That's right.
Oh, the electronics. I, took all the electronics away. I didn't want my kids exposed to that. And then I finally had this revelation a few years later, and I'm like, we're in a world of technology. What am I doing? I'm not setting them up to learn. And so instead of cutting it out, we made movie time, but I sat with them and watched it with them, and we made it a family affair so that it was, the association is with love and connection.
That's awesome. I love that. Yeah, that's definitely, sometimes our movie nights are our sacred time after a long, busy week, but you're right. I mean, that's when I get the most cuddles and they just both lay on me and it's a really nice time, but we're watching it together. If there's questions, or you can interact with them in that way to like, have them learn things from it too. So yeah, I think that's awesome. Well, would you like to share with us a little bit now that we've learned more about the conscious parenting? And I guess I should say too, is there anything you want to share about what a session would look like, or how the structure is if somebody's interested in learning more about it?
For the conscious parenting? The conscious parenting, it's just, no, we just sit down and I like to know what's going on in the client's life and what their focus is, where are they at, where would they like to be, and then we just go from there. I'm intuitive, and so I also tune in and I can see elusive patterns and things like that. So, every session is a little different. I just jump in and wherever it takes us is where it goes.
Thank you so much. And so if you'd like to share maybe a little meditation now for us so that we can experience the sacred geometry work as well, and anything you want to share about that, feel free.
Sure. So what I'll do is just take a minute or two. What I'll do is I'll close my eyes and just tune in. And I'm going to connect with my higher guidance and all the higher selves that are listening, whether it's real time or later time, it's going to connect either way. And there's a really beautiful thing that happens with that when you have groups of people come together, because the healing that happens is so profound compared to if it's just two of us. And so then just with breath work, I'll guide it through and then we'll be done. So I'm going to close my eyes now.
Okay.
And take a couple minutes. Okay, so when you're ready, again, your eyes closed, you can just open them back up. Maybe take a deep breath. So the templates that came through were happiness and adventurousness and self-acceptance. And so, yeah. So everyone might experience some, different things opening up in their lives around that, or revelations, and this work can be done not just on humans. I've worked with animals. I've done home clearings and blessings. I've used it as a tool for manifesting. I wanted a vehicle not too long ago, and it was like, okay, bring it all together. I need all the people, everything to come together. And I was just kind of playing around, and the car came up the next day. It doesn't always happen that fast, but it can be used in many ways. It's fun.
Wow. That was really incredible. I felt this huge energy coming in a little bit from my crown to my third eye area here. And then I just had this, it's so funny that you say it was happiness, because I started to get this goofy grin is how I feel like it. I just was smiling. I could feel I had my eyes closed, but I kept wanting to smile really big. I was thinking, this is so funny. I'm I was literally wow, I feel giddy right now. I'm so happy.
Awesome.
So that's hilarious that that's the happiness was part of it. So you said happiness, adventure, that was it? Adventurousness. And then what was the third one?
Self-acceptance, which is what often stands in the way of those first two.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm a Sagittarius, so adventure is my number one word. So I love that too. I'm yes, definitely can bring happiness. So, well, thank you so much for sharing that with us, and your amazing work and sharing the background and insights with it and your own journey. Is there any words of wisdom or anything you want to leave us with today?
I guess the number one is everything starts with us and how happy we are. And when we're taking care of our needs, everything else in our life begins to come together in larger ways. And so we can get wrapped up in doing things for the approval of others, or doing what we think we need to do as parents, and really, if it doesn't feel good, then we might want to take a few steps back and nourish ourselves first, so that we always want to be gaining energy in what we're doing. And so safety, I think, is a great objective to make. We always want to be in a point of safety, feeling at ease.
Yeah.
We can. I mean, it's a balance point. We're not always going to feel that way, but we're always moving towards that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much again, Desirae. And for anyone that wants to work with you here at 808 Wellness, she's available for private sessions and for both the sacred geometry healing as well as the conscious parenting. So if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us, or you can find out more about her on our website on 808wellness.com on the Healing Arts Practitioner page. So thank you everybody for joining. Thank you, Desirae, so much for your time, and we look forward to more to come from you. So have a wonderful day, everybody. Aloha.
Aloha.